They said I wasn't a hero anymore, just a tired old man holding on to scraps of fabric and dusty stories. That's what the vice principal whispered to a teacher as my daughter stepped into the school gym wearing my dress blues jacket that hung nearly to her knees. Its sleeves rolled and still too long for her small arms, her chin high even as a ripple of laughter spread through the kids seated cross-legged on the floor. They didn't see me the day before, standing alone in the faint yellow light of my living room, my hand trembling slightly as I ran a callous thumb over the glass of my shadow box, tracing ribbons and medals I hadn't shown anyone in decades, some for valor, some for sacrifice, some for things I don't talk about even now. And I told myself, again and again, to leave the past shut tight where it belonged. But when I heard her sobbing behind her bedroom door that evening after practice presentations, clutching the jacket I thought she'd leave on its hanger, I knew I couldn't stay silent forever. The world outside may have decided men like me were relics, but to her I was still Dad, still the man in the faded photograph on the mantel. And though I kept my mouth shut when they called me a has-been, I wouldn't let them do that to her. So I reached for the little brass latch on the shadow box I'd sealed in 1972 and slowly pried it open for the first time, the faint scent of leather and gun oil escaping as I lifted out the silver star, the Purple Heart, the Distinguished Service Cross, awards even the folks in this town wouldn't recognize, and tucked beneath them, a folded, yellowed letter with a general's name scrawled across the bottom, a letter I thought I'd never need again, until now. So if you believe no child should ever be mocked for honoring her family's service, make sure to like and subscribe, because what happened the next morning didn't just quiet a school, it shook the whole community awake. As I sat in my truck across from the playground before school started, watching her slip past the chain-link fence with her head bowed, jacket buttons glinting weakly in the sun, I felt the guilt twisting in my gut like barbed wire, thinking maybe I should have told her not to wear it. Maybe I should have warned her the world doesn't clap for honor anymore. But when I saw the older kids circling her like wolves, snickering and pointing, one boy mimicking a stiff salute as his friends cackled, I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, and I swore I felt old scars beneath the leather tighten like they did overseas. And I knew then it was time to call in a favor from a man who once told me, "You ever need me, Sergeant, I'll come," though I never imagined I'd use it for this. I hadn't heard his voice in years, but when he answered after only 2 rings, the baritone as sharp as I remembered, I simply said, "Sir, it's my daughter," and silence stretched on the line before he replied, "Give me a place." In time. And now here I was, the next day, heart pounding like it hadn't in decades, watching through the gymnasium's narrow windows as the principal droned about community leaders and future careers, while my daughter sat off to the side, trying to disappear into my too big jacket, the other students still smirking and whispering. And then the doors at the back of the gym creaked open with a sound that seemed to echo forever, a sound I'll never forget, and the soft clack of polished boots on hardwood floors cut through the murmurs, growing louder as students began turning, one by one, eyes widening as a tall figure stepped into the light, his uniform immaculate, for silver stars gleaming on each shoulder, campaign ribbons that spanned decades. And every single voice in that room fell silent as General Matthew Harlan, my old commanding officer, strode up the center aisle flanked by 2 aides, his gaze locked not on the principal, but on my daughter. I couldn't hear it from outside, but I could see it in the hush of the room, and the way the popular kids' smug faces drained of color, and the principal's mouth falling open as Harlan took the microphone and said words that would stay with me forever. "I came here because I heard a young lady showed more courage yesterday than many grown men I've led into combat, and because her father is one of the finest Marines this country's ever seen, Sergeant," front and center, and as I pushed open the doors, my boots hitting the polished gym floor with every step, I saw my daughter's eyes fill, not with tears of humiliation this time, but with the quiet strength I'd carried through every battlefield, and I realized that even after all these years, there are some battles you don't fight alone. The sound of my boots on the gym floor was deafening to me, though I doubt anyone else noticed over the silence that had swallowed the room whole, silence so thick you could hear the squeak of a folding chair as a teacher shifted nervously, the soft rustle of my daughter's 2 long sleeves as she clutched them tight against her chest, her wide, tear-rimmed eyes fixed on me like I was a ghost walking straight out of her bedtime stories. I could feel every gaze drilling into my back as I followed General Harlan up the center aisle, his presence radiating the same unshakable command it had all those years ago when we'd stood in a desert half a world away, waiting for the word to move. And as we reached the front, he stopped, turned, and gave me a small nod. A silent order to take my place, to stand tall not for medals or ribbons but for the little girl who believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself anymore. And as I stepped up beside him, I saw the principal fumbling for words. His face pale as chalk, his carefully rehearsed career day script dangling limply from his fingers. Harlan took the microphone without waiting for permission, his deep voice filling every corner of the gym with the kind of quiet authority that doesn't need volume to command respect. And he said, "Yesterday, a young lady walked into this room wearing a uniform too big for her, but a heart far larger than most men I've led into combat. And instead of applause, she was met with ridicule. Some even dared to laugh at her for honoring her father's service. Today I'm here to remind you all what that uniform means, what it costs, and why no one, no child, should ever be made to feel ashamed for carrying their family's legacy." And with every word, I saw shoulders slump, smirks fade, and eyes dart away in shame as his gaze swept across the room like a spotlight, stopping briefly on the ringleader of the bullies, a boy who suddenly found his sneakers very interesting. I stood still, my hands clasped behind my back in parade rest, my eyes locked on my daughter who sat frozen in her chair, her little fingers trembling as they brushed against the gold buttons of my jacket, and I wished I could tell her what I was thinking. That this wasn't just about her anymore, that in this moment she was teaching an entire school, maybe an entire town, what courage really looked like. Then Harlan turned to me, placed a hand on my shoulder, and said words that hit harder than any battlefield ever. "Good, Sergeant Walker, you've given enough to this country, but you came back here today to give something more, your story, your honor, your example, and for that, we thank you." And as the first hesitant applause broke out from a corner of the room, slowly spreading like a spark catching dry leaves, I saw tears spill down my daughter's cheeks, not from hurt this time, but from pride so fierce it made my own eyes sting. Yet even as the clapping grew louder, I knew my part wasn't done, not yet. Because there were still things these students needed to hear from the man they once dismissed as just an old guy with war stories. And as Harlan handed me the microphone, the gym falling silent again, I took a slow breath and said, "Most of you don't know me. And that's all right. I didn't come here for me. I came for her," nodding to my daughter as she wiped her eyes with the sleeve of my jacket. "But maybe it's time you heard why she thought wearing this uniform mattered enough to face every single one of you knowing you'd laugh. Maybe it's time you understood what's behind these ribbons and stars, not glory or ego, but names of men and women who never came home, who never got the chance to watch their kids grow up. And if that's something worth laughing at, then maybe we need to have a different kind of lesson today." And I let the words hang there, heavy and unflinching, because this wasn't just a speech, it was a reckoning. And as I looked out at rows of wide eyes and slack jaws, I knew every single person in that gym was about to learn what real respect feels like. The microphone felt heavier than I expected, not like the cold steel of an M16 or the reassuring grip of a combat knife, but heavy in a different way, like it carried all the weight of the brothers I'd left behind and the promises I'd made to their families. And as I looked out over the sea of young faces, some pale with embarrassment, others wide with awe, I took a breath that felt like my first real one in years and said, "I didn't come here to scare anyone or to make a scene. I came here because yesterday my daughter came home crying, not because she was weak, but because she was strong enough to wear my uniform in front of all of you, even knowing she might be laughed at. And that kind of courage deserves to be honored, not mocked." And I paused, my voice catching slightly as my eyes found hers, sitting in the front row clutching the jacket's hem like a lifeline, her face streaked with drying tears and her lip trembling as though she wasn't sure if she should smile or cry. And I kept going. "This jacket isn't a costume. It isn't for show. Every thread was earned with sweat, blood, and sacrifice, not just mine, but of men and women whose names are etched on walls you'll never see, whose stories ended in sand, in mud, in jungles far from home, and the only thing they ever asked in return was that we remember them. So when you laugh at a little girl for honoring her father, you're laughing at every one of them too." And a ripple of discomfort passed through the gym as I let the silence settle, not out of anger, but because sometimes silence says more than words ever could. And when I spoke again, softer this time, the room leaned in to catch every word. "I spent 30 years trying to forget what I saw out there, and maybe I succeeded too well. Maybe I let this town forget too, let my daughter grow up in a world where service was invisible unless it came with a movie deal or a parade. But standing here now, I realize silence never honors the fallen, it buries them. And I looked to the back, where the principal stood shifting awkwardly, his clipboard held like a shield, and to the row of teachers who avoided my gaze, then back to the students. So let me say this plainly. My daughter didn't wear this jacket because she wanted attention. She wore it because she believed in something bigger than herself. And if that's old-fashioned, then I guess I'm old-fashioned too. But I'd rather be that than forget where I came from. And for the first time since I stepped in, I let a smile tug at the corner of my mouth, because I could see it. The shift, the popular boy who'd led the teasing now staring at the floor, his face flushed red as his friends fidgeted beside him. And then a sound broke through, faint at first, a single pair of hands, clapping near the back, then another, then more until the entire gym was filled with applause. Not the polite kind you give a guest speaker, but the raw, rising kind that starts in your chest and pours out, because you can't hold it in anymore. And my daughter's face crumpled as she sprang to her feet and ran to me, burying her head in my chest, her tiny hands gripping my jacket tight, as if she was trying to merge her heartbeat with mine. And I bent down, wrapping my arms around her, whispering, "You made me proud before all this. You didn't need to prove a thing." But I could feel her smile against my chest as she whispered back, "I wanted them to know who my dad is." And that's when I realized it wasn't my medals or my service that had silenced this room. It was her bravery, her stubborn, quiet belief in me when I'd nearly forgotten to believe in myself. When I stood again, the general placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes glittering with unshed tears as he addressed the room one last time. "Remember this moment, because one day you'll tell your own children you were here when Sergeant Walker reminded us all what honor means." And as the applause swelled once more, I caught sight of the principal stepping forward. His head bowed slightly as he muttered something I couldn't hear, though later I learned he'd apologized on behalf of the staff. And even that ringleader boy, though his words were awkward and low, managed a quiet "sorry, sir," as I passed him on my way out. But the thing I'll carry forever isn't the apologies or the clapping. It's the look in my daughter's eyes as we walked side by side to the truck, her small hand gripping mine like she'd never let go. And when we got home, I didn't put the shadow box back on the shelf this time. I left it open, its metals catching the afternoon light as if they too had been waiting for this day to come. And in that moment I knew I hadn't just reopened a box. I'd reopened a part of myself I thought I'd sealed shut forever.